Thanks for joining us on the Ramsey Consulting Services blog. We help small and mid-sized businesses simplify technology and stay secure so you can focus on growing your business. Today we're talking about vendor email compromise. Let's get into it. Vendor email compromise is a type of business email compromise, or BEC, attack where cybercriminals impersonate or take over a trusted vendor's email account to trick businesses into making fraudulent payments. Between 2016 and 2021, over $43 billion in losses were recorded globally, with small and mid-sized businesses, or SMBs, accounting for 70% of incidents, each costing around $75,000 on average. Between 2013 and 2023, the FBI's Internet Crime Complaints Center tallied more than $55.5 billion in exposed BEC losses. Vendor email compromise, or VEC threats, surged rapidly, with a 96% increase in risk in 2021, and by 2023, average BEC-related losses per incident reached about $137,000. Unlike typical BEC scams, where an attacker pretends to be your CEO or finance director, VEC targets your supply chain. Because these emails often look like they come from someone you work with regularly, they are less likely to raise red flags. How vendor email compromise attacks work. Cybercriminals are strategic. They often spend weeks or months observing a target before making a move. Here's how a typical vendor email compromise attack unfolds. Reconnaissance. The attacker identifies a vendor and maps out their business relationships, often using public data or stolen credentials. Account compromise or spoofing. They either gain access to the vendor's real email account or create a convincing lookalike domain. For example, using a zero instead of the letter O, like vend0 or .com instead of vendor.com. Monitoring. If they have access to a real account, they watch actual invoice conversations to learn how and when payments happen. Fake invoice or payment instructions. At the right time, the attacker sends a payment request with altered banking details. Everything else looks normal. Cash out. The money is routed through mule accounts and withdrawn before the fraud is discovered. The entire attack may take just one reply from an accounts payable team member who thinks they're doing their job. Why vendor email compromise attacks are so effective. Vendor email compromise attacks succeed because they look like legitimate business requests from vendors you trust. Attackers rely on subtlety and familiarity, making their messages hard to spot and easy to mistake for routine communication. They exploit human trust rather than technical weaknesses. Messages often come from real accounts or highly convincing spoofed emails. They are highly targeted, realistic, and carefully timed. And many email security tools don't catch them because no malware or malicious links are involved. Recent data highlights just how widespread and damaging these attacks have become. The FBI's Internet Crime Complaints Center, or IC3, reported more than $2.7 billion in losses from business email compromise in 2022. Proofpoint State of the Fish report shows that attacks impersonating vendors continue to rise as criminals exploit supply chain vulnerabilities. Cisco's annual cybersecurity report points to increasing sophistication in both supply chain and email compromise tactics. Perhaps most concerning, fewer than 1 in 4 organizations are able to recover any of the stolen funds. Real-world examples. While large enterprises often make headlines, SMBs are frequent targets due to fewer resources for detection and prevention. A Victorian construction firm in Australia received what seemed like a valid draft invoice from a known supplier, followed quickly by an updated version citing banking changes. The payment was processed, and nearly $900,000 vanished. Thanks to Bendigo Bank's fraud team, $897,083 was recovered. Stories like this illustrate why vendor email compromise is not just a tech problem, but a business risk. Signs you might be a target. Knowing the warning signs can help your team spot potential fraud. Request to update vendor banking details, especially if unexpected. Slight misspellings or subtle changes in the vendor's email domain. Unusual urgency or pressure to approve invoices quickly. Emails from new contacts or unfamiliar addresses claiming to be from a vendor. And invoices arriving earlier or later than expected, or with vague or incomplete details. How to protect your business. Customer versus vendor. As a customer, your risk is sending money to a fraudster instead of your legitimate vendor. To protect yourself, always confirm new or changed payment instructions by calling a trusted contact. Don't rely on email alone. Maintain a secure list of verified vendor banking details. Implement a two-person review and approval process for large payments. Train your accounts payable team to recognize red flags, such as unusual urgency or inconsistent language. Use an email security solution that can detect domain impersonation and spoofing attempts. If fraud occurs, contact your bank and report it to the FBI's IC3 right away. Their recovery asset team has helped many organizations recover stolen funds. As a vendor, your risk is that your email identity is hijacked or spoofed, damaging your reputation and causing financial loss. To protect yourself, require multi-factor authentication, or MFA, on all email accounts, especially for finance and executive staff. Monitor for suspicious login activity and unauthorized forwarding rules. Implement SPF, DKIM, and DMARC email authentication protocols to prevent spoofing. Educate employees on phishing risks and encourage reporting of unusual email activity. Consider using secure portals or encrypted methods for sending sensitive invoice or payment information. Include a clear disclaimer on invoices such as, "We will never change payment details via email. Please contact us directly to verify any changes." Why this threat is growing. Several factors contribute to the rise in vendor email compromise attacks. Businesses increasingly rely on digital invoicing and fast payment methods, reducing time for verification. The complexity of supply chains means more vendors and contact points, offering more opportunities for attackers. Cybercriminal groups offer professional VC as a service tools, making attacks more accessible. Many SMBs still lack formal vendor management, payment verification processes, and modern security measures, creating vulnerabilities. What you can do today. Vendor email compromise is a serious but manageable threat. Start by reviewing recent payments for unusual or unverified transactions, evaluating your internal processes for verifying vendor communications and payments, training your team on how to spot vendor email compromise red flags, implementing security measures like MFA, email authentication, and email protection solutions, considering ongoing security awareness training to keep your staff prepared. Taking these steps can significantly reduce your risk. If you're unsure how secure your vendor communications are, let's talk. Ramsey Consulting Services equips your team with the technology and training to defend against vendor email compromise and other evolving threats. We hope you found this useful. For more insights on cybersecurity and business development, visit us anytime at ramseycs.net/blog. If you have questions about our services and how we can support your business, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks for listening and take care.